Every Sunday morning we set aside time to bring our personal joys and sorrows for sharing with the rest of our congregation. Dad Goodsit asked if we could remember his father, who was having back surgery. He's been suffering with Alzheimer's, and Dan is concerned with how the anesthesia might affect his present condition, and that it could possibly make things worse. So let's keep him and Dan and Millie in our thoughts. And if there's something on your heart, or joy or concern you'd like to share with the congregation, you'll have an opportunity to do that as I walk around with a microphone. If you do, please raise your hand, stand if you are able, and tell us who you are. And I remind everyone, this is not a time for announcements, but a time for us to share in your joy or sorrow. Owen today? So no, I know you got a lot on you.
Hi, I'm Joan. Oh, sorry. They can really hear me. I'm Joan Leary, and I'm the chairperson of the caring committee. And it just occurred to me this morning that we have a lot of people who are shut in or not able to come to church. So I want to invite all of you. We do our part in sending cards and calls and visits, but I'd like to invite all of you as well to touch base with some of the people that are unable to come to you.
Hey, Brian. And actually, I don't have a joy or sorrow. I just have a question for Joan. If you could send out the names of people that we could be contacting, it would be great. Okay? Right, but over time, you publish it, and I don't save them. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Anyone else? We hold both close by Reverend Julianne Jamaica Soto. They are a Unitarian minister and activist and live in the Pacific Northwest. In this community, we hold both close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home. Let's take some time for quietness. Our first reading, titled The Web of Existence by Reverend Rabbi. As a beginning, I shared words from a pamphlet edited by Reverend Dr. Paul Racer. I'm going to share two more perspectives from UU leaders working in various ministries. All of these perspectives can be found on the UUA website under Unitarian Universalist Views of God. Long before I knew anything about physics, Rabbi writes, I sensed that life is woven together by invisible threads of being, that the earth and all that lies beyond it emanates not from one source, but from a complex web of existence and energy that spans time and space. And while I believe that there are conscious connections and interdependent relationships within this great web of existence, I do not use the word God or goddess to describe it. The universe that I experience has no moral aspect. There is no underlying plan or message to be shown. Giving intentionality to life is a human tendency. The beauty and excitement of being human is that we have infinite opportunities to make our own meaning. This reality forces me to share viscerally in the full range of the earth's joy and suffering. It requires that I work for justice and the transformation of all that would marginalize or oppress. Being part of a conscious universe with no moral first cause means that each moment profoundly matters. Everything that I do, say, think, or feel relates to everything else, and I may have consequences and meaning beyond my comprehension. In the midst of this, I am in perpetual awe of the power of such a universe. Second reading is Life Force by Reverend Scotty McClellan, who's the Director of Religious Service at Stanford University, Stanford. He writes, as a young child, I thought of God as a magical, all-powerful being who was responsible for everything that happened, good or bad. Later in childhood, I began to feel I had cause and effect relationship to God, getting some control over good and bad results by how I prayed, petitioned, and behaved. That's how I did it too. Then in my teenage years, God became personalized for me as the ideal parent, unconditionally accepting and loving. By the time I was in my 20s, God had become an impersonal force or energy in the universe. I still resonate most closely with William Wordsworth's way of describing God in King Abbey. A sense of sublime, of something far more deeply infused, whose dwelling is the light of setting sun, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and roars through all things. Yet in my 50s, I've also begun to pray to God as a person again, especially in times of great need and great joy. I do that even as I know God intellectually as an impersonal life force. So I live in paradox and ambiguity with God now, often simply feeling overcome with awe as Spirit fills me from some source far beyond my own conscious control.
Thanks again for having me back. I've spent about 45 years as a clergy person. And we heard from Steve earlier today that I spent my life in a variety of different venues. College as a professor, hospital chaplaincy, had a congregation for 36 years in Connecticut. And in all of these venues, I would be asked questions constantly. But I don't think there was ever any time in my career when the question, what if I don't believe in God, resonated with me. There is an old wise sage in the Jewish world. His name was Rabbi Moshe Leib of Sassov. He was one of the early Hasidic masters who lived in the late 1700s. And he was once asked by a disciple, if believing in God is so wonderful, then why did God create atheists? And Rabbi Sassov thoughtfully answered, even the denial of God can be uplifted through deeds of righteousness and charity. For if someone comes to you and asks for help, your help, you should not turn them away with the pious words saying, brother, have faith, and take your troubles to God. You need to act as if there was no God in existence, as if you were the only person in the world who could help this person, only yourself. In other words, according to Rabbi Sassov, God created atheists to teach us that one can be a good person, a whole person, a respected person, a righteous person, a moral person, without belief in a deity. In fact, one who does good without the promise of reward or the threat of punishment just may be the purest kind of human being. Believing in God, at least in the traditional personal sense, my dear friends, can be a real challenge. On the one hand, you have the utter insanity and propensity towards evil that we find in the human race. It seems like the only thing that we may be good at is murder. Okay, we're also pretty good at making movies, especially movies about murder. All of our vaunted technology, computers, space travel, GPS, telecommunications, AI, and other things, all of that was developed first and foremost with making killing more efficient. A member of my congregation once told me a story about a reporter in San Francisco who once asked a homeless person whether or not he believed in God, and the homeless man thought a moment and he said, I believe in God, but I think God is crazy. And the reporter asked, well, why do you think God is crazy? And the homeless man looked back at him and said, we are all made in God's image, and we are all crazy, so God must be as well. On the other hand, you have the fundamentally inscrutable nature of God. To believe in something, by definition, means to accept it without evidence. If there were evidence of God, it wouldn't be called believing. It would be called knowing. I've read the arguments of those who think they know God exists in the scientific sense. They promote a strain of thought known as intelligent design. These are the people who believe that the beauty of nature is proof of a divine being. They say things like, I know there's a God because the banana fits in the human hand perfectly. That's just utter silliness. The banana fits in our hand and looks appetizing because we crossbred it that way. Go take a look at the original banana. They look gross, and they don't fit in your hand at all. These are the same people who say that our wonderful bodies prove that there is a God. Right. Our wonderful bodies with one set of irreplaceable adult teeth, knees that don't last, fragile spines, backs that are vulnerable to even the slightest jostle, and brains that struggle to be normal, let alone great. Now don't get me wrong. I do believe in God. But I have to admit that my reason for believing is because there is no evidence of God. And I believe nonetheless. Or if you want a slightly wordier version of my answer, it's that I think the universe is a cold and desolate place without God. So I choose to believe. I'm not asking for a medal because I believe in God. Nobody should. I'm merely saying that I understand atheists and agnostics. I get it. Believing in God is a serious challenge. But today I'd like to suggest a way that even the most ardent atheist can believe in God. Now, fair warning. This trick probably works for atheists if our idea about God is not completely a fixed doctrine. Here goes. First, have you all heard of the Jewish holiday of Passover? Okay. So, on Passover there's a book that we read called the Haggadah. You might have heard of it. The Haggadah is just a collection of midrashim. It's a collection of stories. But if you go to the parable of the 4 children that's in the Haggadah, and you take a look at the part about the person who's called the wicked child, there it says the following. What does the wicked child say? He says, "What is this worship to you?" To you, not to him. And since he excluded himself from the collective community, he denied a principle of faith. In this case, the commonly used English translation is literally accurate, but doesn't really capture the true meaning of the story. It's true that the Hebrew words kafar be'ikar literally mean he denied a major principle. But many don't understand that this phrase is simply a euphemism for denying God. The idea of denying God was so loathsome to the sages that they didn't even want to express the idea in words. So they hid it in euphemistic language. If we read the passage the way that it was meant to be understood, it says this: and since he excluded himself from the collective, from the community, he denies that God exists. This is a stunning passage, because look at how it defines a belief in God. It says that believing in God and belonging to the collective community are one and the same thing. If you are part of the community, then you are a believer. It doesn't matter what your personal theological thoughts or outlook are. It doesn't matter that it lacks the presence of a traditional definition. A believer is one who remains part of the community no matter what. Whether you think of God in a traditional personal sense or in a more philosophic sense, or no sense at all, I think is immaterial. Belonging and believing seem to be synonymous. The problem with the wicked child is that he left the community, and not that he denied the basic principle of God. The latter can be corrected through education, whereas the former would be much harder to remedy. Now, there's more support for this idea in mysticism. In Hebrew, we call it Kabbalah, or Kabbalah. The major text is called the Zohar. And we read the following that is frequently quoted in other sources. It says, God, the Bible, and Israel are all one thing. This is a mystical idea that would take weeks to unpack as such. And I'm not saying that you should necessarily take it literally. But even so, I think the basic idea is a beautiful one. The community, the Bible, and God all are a single truth. Therefore, one can believe in God by merely being part of the community and loving its traditions that are given to us in the Bible. Believing in God is the same as believing in the special calling of humanity. Our existence through thousands of years, many of which were terrible, is all the evidence of God that I need. We shouldn't shake our heads or feel disappointed when we read the statistics about people and their belief in God. If you're curious, according to the latest figures, only about 29% of Jews identify as believers in God. Americans in general, mostly raised in some form of Christianity, believe in God a lot more, 81%. And virtually all Muslims profess a belief in God. Only the Jews have that low number. But again, that doesn't bother me at all. The number is low because people think that believing in God means believing in a man with a beard in the sky. or maybe an invisible, all-powerful brain in the heavens. But these are primitive ideas about God. For us, the definition of who is a believer is much, much wider. Some believe that God controls our individual lives, as well as the most distant galaxies. Some believe that God is the creator of the universe. But that understanding, the Holy One, is beyond our comprehension. Some believe that God exists in the human heart. And now I've given you another option, which is that a person who belongs to a spiritual community, a community like this, is automatically counted as a believer. There was an old sage, his name was Rabbi of Wrocław. He taught that in all aspects of religion and life, make it more simple. Less is more. We overcomplicate everything. We are so sophisticated we make ourselves neurotic. Maybe simplicity is what's called for. So let me try to make the whole question of God into something so simple that we can all relate. What do we know about our obligation to God? Well, if you look at the Bible says it's to love God with all our hearts, with all our soul, with all our might. What's missing? There are no conditions. Loving God is a pure, non-conditional, non-transactional relationship. I just love God, and I'm lucky to have God to love. Anything else may or may not happen, but that's not what this love is all about. Let me sum up with a brief personal story. When I was 17, about 100 years ago, there was a girl. There's always a girl. And I was crazy about this girl. To this day, I don't know if she ever knew that I was crazy about her. I think she didn't. When I saw her, or when I interacted with her, I had this amazing feeling. I was just happy to be in her orbit. Call it puppy love, call it attraction, I don't know. What I do know is that it was never reciprocated. But my heart fluttered to be in her space. Did I have hopes and dreams for more? Certainly. But the fact that it never happened never lessened what I felt for her. It was all one way. It was all one direction. And yet I preferred that to not being around her. So why do I share this with you? Because God is like that girl. Do I hope for more? Sure. I want God to appear. I want God to save me in crisis. and save the world while he's at it. But do I reject God and feelings that I have because I don't get more? No. Because the act of being able to love is something that I control. And it makes me feel something. That feeling does not go away because I never get any more. I don't get angry. I don't lash back. I'm lucky to have God in my life. Anything more would be great. But God doesn't stop being a passion of mine, because passion is what I bring to the relationship. I'm the one in need. And just knowing that God is in my life is something special for me. In my adult life, the role of that girl is played by God. I may ask questions. I may want more than I get. I may be disappointed. But in the end, just having God in my life is important. And that is what the Bible understands, what it defines, what I'm supposed to do about this complicated relationship. Make it simple. May you all find that love. The Bible never says that we have to believe in God. But it does tell us that we have to love God. Because if believing in God and believing in humanity are the same, then loving God and loving the people are also unified ideas. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. That's wonderful. As we take time to reflect on today's words and music, let's also take time to show our gratitude for this community and all that it does. The news offering will be gratefully received. And if you're watching the service on Facebook Live or YouTube, please consider sending your contribution today. The information you need to donate is on the screen. The ushers may come forward.
If you knew that you would die today, you saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that love can break your heart, when you're down so low you cannot fall, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses, how much regret? What chain reaction would cause an effect? Makes you turn around, makes you try to explain, makes you forgive and forget, makes you change, makes you change. If you knew that you would be alone, knowing right and being wrong, would you change?
ready to get. How many losses, how much regret? What chain reaction will cause an effect? Makes you turn around, makes you try to explain, makes you forgive and forget, makes you change, makes you change. Are you so upright you can't be bent if it comes to blows? Are you so sure you won't be crawling? If not for the good, why risk falling? Why risk falling? If everything you think you know makes your life unbearable, would you change? Would you change? If you've broken every rule and vow, and hard time come to bring you down, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would die today, if you saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? Would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would die today, if you saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? Would you change? Would you change?
We have a few reminders of what's happening this week at UUCGN before we sing again. In the lobby you will find petitions to sign for a ballot initiative that, if passed, will allow Floridians to decide that Medicaid should be expanded. Like the petition drive for Amendment 4, UUCGN is acting as a local hub to help collect signed petitions. Also, there will be a summer workshop after the service next Sunday, July 21st, titled Widening Our Influence. The focus will be on connecting with differently minded people, practices that help us to avoid being triggered, and a process that aids understanding. The workshop will last 90 minutes. The refreshments will be served. And if you want to take advantage of that, please RSVP to the office. And finally, next Sunday, Reverend Tony Fisher will be back with us, and Dave Dust will join John and Abby for a service of words and music titled Finding Home. And now, let's rise and body our spirit to sing our closing hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, number 1008 in the Teal hymnal. And of course, the words will be on the screen.
My heart is in a holy place. My heart is in a holy place. Blessed with love and amazing grace. My heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in the traverse, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in the holy place. When you tell us all from deep inside, when you listen real loud in mind, and you hear our voices in each other's words, that our heart is in the holy place. When our heart is in the holy place, when our heart is in the holy place, we are blessed with love and embrace. When our heart is in the holy place, when you turn the silence on secret space, when you guard our hearts with remain, when we feel the power of each other's faith, when our heart is in the holy place, when our heart is in the holy place.
Of our worship service today, we offer a benediction, a final prayer, with blessing and thanksgiving to God. So if you'll bow your head, we say, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and may God keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yifnecha, may God's countenance shine down upon you. May God be gracious and may God be kind unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasen lecha shalom, may God's face smile down upon you. May God grant you an abundance of all of life's blessings, of life, of health, of sensitivity, of curiosity, of feeling, of love. And above all, may God grant you shalom shalom, the completeness, the uniqueness, the warmth of God's holy peace. And we say together, Amen. Good morning to you.